Fox News host Mark Levin apparently making the case for sending troops into Iran on his show over the weekend. Take a listen.
Troops on the ground. He said no troops on the ground. I don't remember that in any campaign speech either. But why would we need troops on the ground? Well, there's a lot of reasons, and we wouldn't need 300,000 of them.
That came just hours after President Trump urged his social media followers to tune into Levin's show in a Truth Social post that some are reading as a hint that there will be boots on the ground after all. The president wrote in part Saturday, "Watch Mark Levin interview Mark Thiessen tonight. We'll discuss the importance of hitting Iran hard."
Meantime, a new report from the Washington Post revealing that the Pentagon has deployed thousands of elite soldiers and Marines to the region in recent days and is preparing for weeks of ground operations in Iran, indicating further that it may be imminent. That's something I was going to point to. That was on March 19th. Carolyn Levitt, after that, said there's no plan at this time. That was a quote a few days ago. And then 2 days ago, Rubio was at the G7 summit and said, we can achieve our goals in Iran without putting boots on the ground. So you could naturally understand why Americans are confused by this messaging. Yeah. And then we just heard Joe Kent on Levin's radio show, I believe. And Joe Kent was accusing him of intentionally putting this message out because he's saying that Levin is putting Israel first instead of America first. And then he said that Levin also had a meeting with the president and where they sat down and talked about this kind of stuff. And obviously Levin argued, no, I was invited to the White House. It wasn't that. But for Joe Kent to do what he just recently did and expose all this information that he says was the reason why he stepped out of his position, it's concerning to then see the president point to the same guy to say, watch his show tonight.
Sure. Well, Joe Kent has been exposing a lot of information besides his opinions, which is why he's under investigation for leaking, which might have something to do with the fact that he's doing a media tour to build up his profile as part of his public defense, but that's just my opinion. Look, Mark Levin he's a fixation of the right-wing podcaster class. I don't know many people who watch Mark Levin anymore besides the president himself, but everybody seems to think that he controls foreign policy rather than just agreeing with Donald Trump, who has been saying since the 1980s. I was watching a clip this morning from 1987 of him speaking to a club.
Because I'm running for the presidency. I'm here because I'm personally tired of seeing this great country of ours being ripped off. Why couldn't we go in and take over some of their oil, which is along the sea?
How would you do that? Would you send in the Marines? Would you take a chance in a war?
Let them have Iran. You take their oil. That's what
How?
In New York City about how hard we have to hit Iran and take their oil. This guy's been talking about this for 30 years. I find it strange that people think that he is somehow being controlled into doing the thing that he's always wanted to do.
Well, I think 30 years ago, people weren't looking at Donald Trump as the president or somebody who would go into politics this deeply. They were looking at him as maybe an astute businessman who might have other goals.
He was looking at presidential runs.
But I know he put his name in the hat several times, but I think it became a reality like about 10 years ago when it was like, oh, wow, he's an actual figure and he might have to be looked upon. And so this is something that I think has completely changed. But more recently, in his when he was running for president in his campaign, he was arguing the point about America first and arguing how bad, or not even bad, he didn't use that word. He said he would not continue on a forever war. The way that Biden removed troops from Afghanistan, he criticized that. He didn't want anything like that. And so to see we're going into the Middle East, into another potential war with boots on the ground, when he said out of his mouth, boots on the ground was not the goal more recently than things he said in the past, people should hold him to task for that because you sold one thing and then stepped away from that philosophy.
Yeah, there's a couple things there, which is first, when he ran for president, we all remember he got the largest applause lines in the debates and when he was stumping, particularly in South Carolina, for hitting the bushes and calling the Iraq war a complete failure, an embarrassment. He talked about how it put America's interests last, et cetera, et cetera. So this is part of his brand, that he is generally skeptical of foreign wars, and he does not want America to fight them. That's why he brought on J.D. Vance to really shore up that reputation with the anti-war vote and to project that image. However, I do take umbrage when people sort of leap to saying another forever war when we just don't know yet what this is going to be. We were told a 5 to 6 week operation. We are now on week 5. I will start panicking around week 7, which is why Donald Trump has been instructed by the Pentagon to stop calling it a war and call it a military operation. Now, on libertarian grounds, I have some issues with that. This is exactly what a war looks like. but America has been doing this kind of military excursion for half a century. So
Yeah,
this is just how
I
it
think
works.
the recent moves and the idea that we might take over Kharg Island and try to seize their oil is what's concerning people. But a lot more to talk about on this topic as well.
Very much.
Yeah, we'll talk about it again soon.